Zach is my CTO. We've been friends actually since freshman year of high school. So knew each other really well, always got along really well. Funny, but we're very much opposites in the way we think. I'm more of the like hyperactive, like gotta go, go, go. He's like, you meet him and you just recognize instantly like he's the chillest guy ever. We're both like opposites in the way we think, and it works really well. I'm more of the, entrepreneur business side of things, whereas he's more of the does everything technical, and so it works really well for us. But yeah, so we graduated back in 2019, and he came to me around that time, late 2019, early 2020, with this idea. So throughout college, he had developed a bunch of different sports simulations in classes and then outside of classes just for fun. And he had developed this NBA simulation that basically would simulate an upcoming game, would spit out final score, win percentages, that kind of thing. And he said, Caleb, let's work on this together. Let's try to, create something from this. And so that was Christmas party back 2019. And so we started working on that early 2020. At that point, so I have really no background in sports betting or sports, anything like that. But just did have experience in entrepreneurship, lean startup, at least starting a company, right? And so that's kind of where we took off. Just immersed ourselves, Jared, in the sports betting industry. I came in with no knowledge, and I realized right away, like, this isn't going to be me coming up with ideas, and this is going to be me having to talk to customers like we were just talking about. Like, this is going to be me going directly to the source, realizing that like I'm coming in with zero knowledge, which on one hand is like, wow, that kind of sucks. But on the other hand is like brand new, fresh perspective.
That's pretty interesting. So you guys met, you guys been doing this since 2019, but you're a pretty young guy. So you've got this experience from before of doing startups. So was this your second startup, third startup? Like, give it a little background, like where you had been before that.
I would say like in terms of, I would say like this is my official first startup, but I've worked on other startup like ventures that just didn't really go very far. So a few of them throughout college. I had one that was actually fairly successful. It was called OneSwipe. So basically I was solving the problem of engineering professors. That's where my background is engineering. Engineering professors oftentimes will use whiteboards, and they'll fill the entire whiteboard up with ink. And by the end of the class, they have to erase this entire whiteboard. And so I thought, how could we make this super efficient? And so I invented and have a patent pending for a product called OneSwipe, which is basically there's a track above the whiteboard. There's the eraser that hangs down from it and a handle in the middle. You just push it all. One swipe cleans off the board. So that was really the initial start of like my entrepreneurship mind, I would say. And that was the conversion from me going from like just like focusing on engineering, mechanical engineering. And towards the end of it, I started realizing like, I have so much farther to go before this becomes a real thing, right? And that's where I started learning business, sales, marketing, operations, everything else that's required to, get something off the ground.
That innovator entrepreneur bug took over at that point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny, like you ask somebody back like younger Caleb, like I wanted to be a mechanical engineer since I was like 12, 13 years old. And everybody just knew me as that kid that wanted to be an engineer. And when I started realizing like almost when college was over, maybe this isn't for me. That was kind of a hit to who I was, right? But at the same time, it's better to realize like wanting to go that route. So.
Yeah, investors love engineers coming into the startup world because you're pragmatic, you're very decision focused, right? You use the numbers, the data in front of you. And it's interesting because I was just watching Shark Tank last night, one of my favorite shows. And Mr. Wonderful, of course, like he's like, hey, they're engineers. I love engineers. So you got that going for you. So
yeah, there's always something for it. 4 or 5 years of college, but hey, pointing me in the right direction. So God works in mysterious ways.
So, thinking about the app platform, right? So you guys are doing this sports betting platform. You started with the whole NBA thing, kind of like use as a foundation to test it out, make sure it works. I did some research before we jumped on here, and just looking at some of the statistics and some of the numbers, not necessarily statistics, but just looking at the numbers. You look at just Apple, the Apple platform itself, right? Apple apps. Back in 2019 Q3, there was 2.57 million different apps on Apple, right? Out of that, there's $50 billion in that market that they were looking at. And, there's a 20% growth year over year is what they were talking about at that time. Well, 36.6 billion was available just, to the income of the people and spending, right? Just the spending side of it. So when I'm looking at numbers like that, and, of course, you got to take in consideration like apps like Tinder like that are like 430 million of that number. But, there's a lot of room in that space from a dollar perspective. But you could look at it and say, wow, apps is pretty saturated. So when you looked at that, did you guys think about that? Did you think, wow, this is kind of saturated? What's going to be my angle to kind of go in and really attack, kind of carve my niche?
Yeah, so we originally, like back when we were Fixdpicks, back when we had that first initial value proposition, we were thinking just sticking with a website. And then, late last year, early this year, when we made that big shift, then we realized that we were probably better off going with an app. And that's never really crossed our minds, honestly. And the reason being is because it's still a problem that we're looking to solve. We're not competing with Tinder. We're not competing with any other random apps that are on your phone.
Sure.
We're looking to solve a problem that's not being solved right now. And so I don't see us competing against that. I think that's just kind of like you could say everybody's a competitor, right? You're competing for somebody's time, you're competing for somebody's space on their phone, whatever. But the niche that we're looking at, the more serious type sports bettors, this is a problem that they have, that we found that they have, and we believe, and our hypothesis shows that this is something they're going to want.
Can you talk a little bit more about the problem you're trying to solve? Just for people who are not bettors, kind of like looking at trying to understand what Vault or Fixdpicks, is. For the Vault, app, what specific problem are you guys solving for?
Yeah, good question. So towards the end of the year, we realized with Fixdpicks that the market that we were in was just crazy oversaturated. And at the same time, we saw that being such a new industry here in the US, that there was so many other problems and opportunities that we could be going after. So we made this shift towards Vault, what the company is called now. And the problem that we solved is the more serious type sports bettors like to be able to track their bets, similar to how you might like to track stocks or things that like you invest in. But right now, the problem that they face is they have to do this all manually. It's either done on a spreadsheet, in a notebook. It's just a very barbaric way of having to track just a ton of data. And when you're trying to use that data to learn how to improve, learn where your pitfalls are, it can be really challenging, even if it is in Excel. And so we're making that easy through our platform.
Very cool. How many users do you guys have currently?
So right now we're still in the build phase. We brought over about 300, 400 customers from our old company. Obviously in the same industry, sports betting, so that worked well. But we're still in the build phase. So we're launching an alpha, super basic web-based version in early September for the NFL season. And then with that, that's kind of our sandbox. So that's kind of our place to play around, test it out ourselves, let our customers test it out, and really just get some solid feedback that we can use to then in turn build our beta and then our full launch in the future. So.
Sure. Well, I love the process you're going through. Very pragmatic. So Zach, your CTO, does he have a team of people underneath him that he's working with for developers, or is he kind of like a one-man deal, or how's that?
Yeah, so it's just us. So Zach's background is full stack engineering, so he can handle anything when it comes to that. My background, so it's funny, the mechanical engineering side, I still have a lot of the design engineering and things like that. So I'm doing more front end. So we have our full team is just 2 people. But the systems that we have in place and the platforms that we're using has been making it easy to really just build what we're building. The other thing too, Jared, is the fact that, like, I would recommend for anybody starting out as a small company, whether it's tech or whatever, is starting small, starting in a focused niche. And that's what we're doing.
Right.
We're not trying to hit the masses of sports bettors, and focusing on that and just growing from there. If we can hit this small niche and, we can start bringing in revenue, then we can start bringing on more team members, right? But just starting small and growing from there.
Yeah, it's not important. It's really important not to overextend yourself as you scale up, which a lot of people do. A lot of people go capital intensive, and they're trying to bring in money to, and it puts a lot of stress on that right in the beginning. So you guys starting out and just hammering on what you guys can handle right now, and as you scale, like adding people in the right time frames is definitely an important and a smart decision relative to.
And every company's different. Like for us, this is not the original path. Like 2-3 months ago, Jared, we had a completely different idea. We had done a lot of customer research. We had basically mapped this entire plan out. Like we're going to get investment. We're going to use this specific company to build the front end. We'll take care of the back end with a few more hires that we bring on. And we weren't able to raise the money. And we had to make some pivots towards, all right, let's continue bootstrapping and see where we can get ourselves. And so that's where we're at now.
Bootstrapping, I know a lot of people who bootstrap their businesses, funded out of pocket or even funded from their 401ks, which I don't recommend, by the way. But there's a lot of different avenues to fund a business and startup, right? And being a little bit more patient and trying to really, do it on a shoestring budget can really, really pay off in the end, right? I think one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs and startups do is they think they need tons of capital. And when they start looking at that option, they give away too much equity. And once you lose control of the equity, it can be kind of really for an entrepreneur whose idea is to have this company. You've got investors who are taking a lot of that equity. It can be a little defeating, right? It can actually bring down the vibe within the company. So guarding the equity closely is really, really smart for any startup venture, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be able to have that focus going in, right? Like being able to bootstrap this, and we're still learning as we go and learning who our customer is. And so it almost forces us to chop the fat and focus on what's the most important thing to solve this problem.
Sure.
And growing from there. If we weren't bootstrapping, then we're just like, let's throw it all on this app. Let's do it all. And then we might not hit the mark, right? Once again, different for every industry, every company, but that's just the route that we've experienced. Sure.
Now I know you've done a lot of marketing, or not necessarily just marketing, but networking and trying to market the actual company. You and I have been involved in some different networking groups, and we've had some really good times in those.
Some beers together.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself doing a lot more networking in this initial phase of your business, or are you more focused on app development at this point?
Right now, I would say I'm as much heads down app development as possible. Okay. Just because that's where we're at. Like that's what we need the most of is how quickly we can get this tech to market. At the same time, though, I'm still reserving, like just this past week, I've had a few different conversations with brand ambassadors, our customers, just because you try his best to do everything in parallel, right? Before we started building, we had a lot of different conversations with sports bettors to understand their needs, what they're missing out, what the biggest problems they're having. And if I can, or if anybody that's building something can talk and have those conversations while they're building, you can just get constant feedback. Like all of this, everything that we're doing is kind of just this massive feedback loop. Like we're building the alpha in hopes that we get a bunch of feedback from our current customers saying, this sucks, this is awesome. Use that feedback to build the beta, get feedback from that, and just kind of like take steps at it, right? And these little steps, although take time, I believe you can create a much better product if you're getting direct feedback. So just to answer your question more fully, like I would say the majority of my time is spent with app development, but I try to, as much as I can, talk to our customers and get their feedback right off the bat.
If you look close enough, you can see it everywhere. The thing that moves the world. It's not a mental thing or an experience thing. It's a heart thing. The thing that makes Paylocity more than a technology company, but a people company. It's the source of our strength and the thing that sets us apart. For us, it's about care. It's being open to the outside world and knowing how it affects us inside. It's more than opening our hearts to others. It's engaging others in real ways. It can be simple things, sharing stories and laughing at jokes. It can also be really hard things, like changing the way we work and finding new ways to engage with each other. It's the way we act, the way we think. It's how we care every day. It's what we've always done. It's more than managing HR and payroll. It's about people. We're about evolving company cultures and moving toward a more connected workplace. That's why it's personal. That's why we care. It's how we'll move forward. Together. Paylocity. Forward together.
Focused on that is voice of customers so critical, right? Especially in the stage you're in, and just really listening to them and getting their feedback. But I love how you're building this iterative process, right? It's like a step ladder. It's like, hey, we got this foundation. Let's get their feedback. Let's improve. And it's that plan, do, check, act cycle. And you keep iterating, and that's how you move up quickly, right? You aren't doing this in a vacuum. And I think that's, one of the things a lot of new companies or whether it's in the app development world or whether it's in, any other entrepreneurial venture, mainly in innovation, a lot of people try and do this stuff in a vacuum. You can easily convince yourself you're hitting the mark when maybe you aren't. So
Yeah.
Kudos to you guys for definitely taking the time to go out and get that type of feedback.
I mean, it's so important. And especially if you're bootstrapping, like you don't have the time or the money to build something and realize, that didn't end up hitting the mark, but it's kind of a force to get you to do that.
Sure.
One of the things that, it's been on my mind lately is this idea of there's certain parts of our app and our company that is new and is innovative, and we really need to test to make sure it's going to work.
Sure.
But there's other areas that are like very similar to a competitor of ours or what other people have done in the past. And so just kind of throwing a question back on you, but what are your thoughts on needing to reach out to customers and talk to customers then when you've seen it work in other areas of business or within competitors' areas?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting question. Definitely, I think there's value to it, right? Because we can make some assumptions of what the value that the customer is taking away from it, but it's better to hear directly from the customer themselves. Like, yes, this is a competitor, and you may be using their platform. Well, what is it that draws you to that? What is it? A convenience thing? Is it a service type of benefit or value? Finding the value add or the main value of what they're offering, and then understanding a second piece of that, which is because you're offering a competitive product, right? What is it that would make them pivot or switch to another platform? What is it that they're not getting through this one that if they had that option, it would be a slam dunk and they cross over? I really think there's a lot of value in having that input from the customer from that standpoint. Because once again, we make a lot of assumptions going into this. And not everybody thinks the same way we do, because people come from different aspects of life, different, points of view and perspectives. So having that actually on record is a huge benefit to you developing that, alpha or beta.
Yeah. No, I like how you put that. Like we have basically every idea that you come up with as a startup is an assumption. Like you're assuming that this might work and you need to solve that assumption to prove that out, right? And when you see like a competitor or another area that has worked in the past or that you assume has worked in the past, you still need to kind of solve that assumption, like going to your customer or going to whoever and seeing, is this feature actually useful? Do you use this? You might think it is, but to that customer, it might not be.
Right. A to B testing, they talk about A to B testing when you do marketing, right? And, I never really had a big appreciation for marketing until I started having my own businesses. And when I got into it, because I had, I thought people would love what I love at some certain extent. I'm
Sure.
like, not everybody's going to be a fan. I don't need 100% of people to be a fan, but I thought at least it'd be 50-50. What I found was on some things, we were just totally off the mark. And that's, I gained a huge appreciation for marketing from that aspect. It's interesting, and the more A to B testing you can do, where you're testing two maybe different ends of the spectrum, whether it's brand colors or whether it's logos or whether it's a name of a company, and just constantly A to B testing allows you to kind of keep narrowing that niche to your target customer and really understanding that persona, that profile of who your customer is and what's extremely important to them and what's going to drive them to your platform or to what your offering is. So yeah, I mean, iterative testing is huge, and I'm a huge fan of it. So
it is. It's so important. It's part of that process.
So you mentioned that your head's down at this point, doing a lot of the tech stuff. So you actually programming? I mean, did you learn to program for this?
I'm not. So yeah, when I said heads down, I was just like, how can I keep as many distractions away? Because I get distracted way too easily. Yeah, no. So we are using a company actually based out of Chicago. It's a front end app development, like a low code type software that we're using. So I'm basically taking care of all of the front end, which doesn't really require much code at all.
Right.
Something I can handle, and then Zach handles the back end, and we just kind of merge the two together. So that's where I'm at right now. That's
a relatively new term for a lot of people. Low code. So could you kind of give what you consider low code? Could you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm pretty new to this world too, but from what I'm understanding, so there's low code and then there's no code, and these are both options for if you're just starting out. If you believe that your product is best suited in an app, but you don't want to spend the thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for having an app built, you can build something in these super simple no code or low code softwares. So Adalo is one of them, where it's just basically drag and drop different items to build an app. That was one of the options we were thinking about. The company that we're with now is more of like this. They have the drag and drop, but they have this idea that they can bring in your own back end. And so it's something a little bit more complex, but because we have Zach, we have the team for it. So it really depends what your use case is. Like if you're going in and just seeing if an app is going to work and going to do well with the market, you're probably better off just going with a simple no code. But if you're trying to build something a little more substantial, you might be better off with a lower code.
I think that's an amazing concept that the whole programming industry has gone to, right? This whole fact that you don't have to be a programmer to actually like build an application, right? That, low code, no code. You need to know minimal code for low code. No code, it says it all. You don't need to know. It's like Legos. You just put them together and you can build a platform or an app, which is mind-boggling at this point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're just making it easier to get to market. For us, like the complexity of our vision for where we want this app to go didn't allow us to go with the no code route. We had to go more low code. But what we have used is we used our old website, and you could probably call it a no code type. It's like drag and drop basically. And so we use our website and have used our website as a sandbox, as a testing platform, to try out different features that customers might want to see and get it tested there. And then we build it in the more complex low code area for the app.
Sure. Very cool. I love it. So when you look at, what you and Zach have like built together, right? And a lot of this, these different entrepreneurial ventures, people put together a business plan. They formalize it. And, a lot of people say for your first business, you should do a full business plan. After that, once you get the hang of it, you probably don't need to be as diligent. You can kind of step away from it. And that's the experience I've seen. I actually know quite a few people who have never done a business plan. So I wanted to ask you, have you formally put together a business plan, or did you guys just put out there the vision and you're chasing the vision?
Yeah, we might have created a few different business plans just for like contests and things like that. But honestly, like and I'll probably get some flack for this, but I kind of BS, especially when you're early stage, because if you draw up a business plan,
Yep.
it's kind of like not set in stone, but it's almost like you're saying, this is what we're going to do. And if you're that early stage, you have no idea what you're doing. Like you're going to make so many changes and so many iterations, or at least you should be, because there's no way you're hitting the mark right off the bat. So what we have done though, I love using the business model canvas. It's literally a piece of paper, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 different sections that basically it chops an entire business into 9 sections, and you can just write a few sentences or words per section. A lot easier to change and a lot easier to visualize all in one go. You don't have to read document after document. But yeah, business model canvas all the way. Love that kind of stuff because it helps visualize and easy to change.
So yeah, I'm used to whiteboarding and doing all that. I'm still kind of catching up on these apps like Miro and different ones like that. But business model canvas sounds like a good item for people to look into.
Yeah, it's just a printout basically. Like you can just search it, and it just has like what are your assumed revenue streams? What's your assumed customer? What's your assumed value proposition? All these different things that make up a business. They kind of bucket it off into 9 things, and you fill those out, and it's your job to solve those assumptions. Like, is this revenue stream really going to work? Can we actually make this work? Is this a value proposition that people really want? Is this going to actually solve the problem that we're solving? By combing through that and going through that and solving those things, you can basically create a business through that, and that's what we've used.
And you're spot on about the assumptions thing, right? You put together this business plan. So many entrepreneurs have said that. You put together this business plan with all these assumptions. And yeah, some may feel like BS, right? I mean, but at least it gets the juices flowing. And, probably after 5 to 6 months, that business plan is garbage. Shred it and, retool based on what you know now, right? Which even then, like things are changing constantly. So I always tell my clients, like even with established businesses, I'm like, you should have a rock solid 30, 60, and 90-day plan. Out beyond that, have a vision, maybe for that 1 year mark, 5 year mark, 10-year mark. But those should be visions. And you should just realize that, you're trying to chase after a flag that's out there, but the flag may change over time. Right?
Yeah. And I'm definitely not saying business plans are all BS, right? But I think as an early stage, it's just kind of a waste of time. You should be spending your time solving the assumptions that you're making instead of trying to solve everything in your head on a piece of paper, right? Or in a business plan. So
one of the things I respect about you is you're an action guy. You take action, right? And from our conversations previously, that's been pretty traditional for you. Obstacles, right? Starting a app platform, starting a company. What have been some of your biggest obstacles?
I think one of the big problems that we face and will face in the future is that sports betting is still new to the US, still taboo in certain states, and it really, it's not legalized everywhere quite yet. And so that's been a little bit of an issue when it comes to talking to certain investors that might not understand the industry yet. A lot of them are very intrigued because it's such a quickly growing industry, but oftentimes I've found that when I'm pitching or when I'm explaining what we do, I find that I'm spending more time explaining how sports betting works than the company. And so that's definitely an issue. And I would wrap that all into the bucket of communication. Communication with something like this can be a really big challenge. Another kind of challenge in terms of kind of going along the lines of marketing communication is like Facebook ads and Google pay-per-click have different rules about sports betting and not allowing certain things. And so being able to still advertise on that has been a little bit of a challenge. I mean, there's so many. There's so many obstacles. What locations? I mean, I would say I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to face once we get this tech built. I mean, just building this tech every single day, there's a challenge, there's something coming up. But I think a big thing that we're going to face at the end of this tech tunnel is how do we market this thing? How do we we have our ideas and we've had experience with our old company, but with as much noise as the sports industry and the sports betting industry make, it's it's going to be a challenge to, make ourselves known at the state we're at right now. So that's going to be a really big hurdle that we face in the future.
Have you considered having a brand ambassador? So just one thing when you're talking about sports betting, I just happened to be reading Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. Great book, love it. Highly recommend it to anybody, especially if you're a McConaughey fan. But he's an avid bettor, right? He loves betting on the NFL. He follows that religiously. He talks specifically in there about a specific instance. His brother and him were in Vegas, and they were betting on the Bills and the Cowboys, and I forget what year it was in the Super Bowl, but he goes through that story pretty well. But he is one of those people who's highly recognized who is an avid sports bettor. So if you thought about brand ambassador with somebody like that.
Yeah, I have not. I didn't know Matthew McConaughey was at that level. But we do. We actually have several brand ambassadors that are either professional sports bettors or professional handicappers. So that's definitely going to be a big part of us. Is it's a win-win there, right? Because we can, we're solving a major problem that they're facing, and they can help spread the word with us. So that's going to be a huge driver for us moving forward.
Absolutely.
Got to get Matthew McConaughey though. I didn't know that he was a big thing for him.
If you got McConaughey in, man, that would be a huge win.
He's down in Austin, I'm pretty sure, because he teaches at the university there, and my co-founder is down in Austin. So hey, that might work.
There you go, man. There you go. There's
some sort of connection there. Yep.
You guys are expanding out from NBA, right? For last time we talked, you guys weren't just pigeonholed to NBA. You're looking at these tools for NHL, for NFL, various ones. That's still the plan?
Yep, exactly. So when we were started, we were just focused on NBA, developing simulations for those. And now that we're focused more on overall bet tracking, aggregating data, providing, insights for improvement, we can do that pretty much across all sports. And that's really where our focus is going to be. That way we can, be all year round and can serve the market in that way.
And, from a user interface, right? You talk about using statistics and helping these people understand their win-loss. I think a lot of people think statistics and their eyes kind of glaze over, roll back in their head and stuff. But how easy is it to use this interface for somebody new to the platform? And where would somebody go to find out more about your platform and exactly what the offering is?
Yeah, so in terms of using the platform, I like to think of it as using like your workout apps. A lot of your workout apps or your health apps will have different graphics, different designs, a lot of visuals, which makes it so much easier for anybody to understand what's going on. And less numbers, because that can really bog down people. So that's really a focus that we've really aimed at, is how can we make this visual and help people understand just a ton of data. And then in terms of learning more about the company, so we still haven't put a ton of information on our website yet, but they can check it out at vaultsportshq.com.
Are you thinking about doing any kind of a Kickstarter campaign or anything like that to generate capital for this type of app?
Yeah, good question. So Kickstarter, we wouldn't be able to do because they don't allow any sports betting related type companies.
Okay.
But WeFunder and Republic, I think, are potential options in the future. So definitely think that that's going to be a route that we'll look at, once we're built out with the tech and we're ready for that.
Awesome. I definitely let us know. I'd love to help you guys out and get some exposure for you guys on that type of campaign, because like I said, you and I have had a relationship for at least a year now. We've been on various platforms, and I really love what you're doing, and I really am excited about where you guys are going with this type of stuff. So it's really
well. I love these conversations. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I love these conversations just because I think they hopefully bring a lot of value to other people that are in the same boat. Obviously, my experiences can be very different from every other's, but it's really important to be able to look at and see other people's experiences and take information away from that, notice their failures and see how can I avoid that in the future. So
sure. Let me ask you, as far as other people listening to the podcast who maybe are going down a road like this, where they're developing an app or they're developing some technology and they're doing their first startup, what words of advice do you have for them?
That's a good one. The phrase on my mind lately has been think big, start small. Have an awesome, massive vision. If you want to take your company and make it massive, have that vision, put that vision in your mind. But know that unless you know your market absolutely perfectly, it's probably going to change. And start small. Don't think you need to start trying to get to this huge stage right off the bat. You need to learn, you need to iterate, you need to test, you need to talk to customers and figure out what people truly want and how you can truly solve their problem. So think big, but start small.
I love that. Thank you very much, Caleb. I really enjoyed having you on the podcast, and looking forward to the great things you guys are doing there. So
yeah,
keep us posted.
Thank you, Jared.
Additional links discussed can be found in the comments section below on YouTube. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you found the information useful. OPSQC INC podcast, sponsored by Paylocity.